I told your mother you were a mistake the day she brought you home. That was the first thing Aunt Diane ever said to me that I remember. I was 4. Maybe 5. She was slicing peaches in the kitchen, the blade moving so fast it made the fruit bleed. I remember the way her voice sounded, like she was offering a weather update, not shattering a child. I didn't cry. I just stood there, clutching my stuffed bunny, wondering how someone could say something like that and then go back to making pie. The funny part? She smiled while she said it. Like she was letting me in on some adult secret I was too dull to notice. A mistake. That word clung to me like static. It followed me through school, through every skipped birthday call, through every time she hugged my cousins like royalty and barely nodded at me. But years later, I paid for her daughter's college education. That's the kind of woman I am. My name is Grace. And this is the story of how I lost everything, my relationship, my family, even my self-worth, just to learn that sometimes, sweet revenge isn't loud. It's quiet. It's final. And it tastes a little like peach pie left uneaten. It started with him. Damien. The man I thought I would marry. The man who told me I was everything he never knew he needed. The man who, as it turns out, didn't need honesty in his life half as much as he needed secrets. The first crack wasn't the lipstick on his collar or a strange text at midnight. No, it was a laugh. Mine. I laughed too hard at a joke at dinner once, one his coworker made, and Damien's eyes changed. Grace, tone it down, he whispered, teeth clenched. You're doing that thing where you make everything about you. I blinked. I was laughing. Exactly. I should have known then. But when you've spent your life believing you were a mistake, you get real good at shrinking. Damien didn't hit. He didn't scream. He just corrected. Maybe don't wear that dress, it's a little loud. You're overreacting again, Grace. Let's not tell your family about this yet, they wouldn't get it. At first, I mistook it for care. Love disguised as concern. But control wears pretty outfits when you don't know the difference. The truth is, Damien was good at pretending. Good at apologies that smelled like roses and guilt trips disguised as compliments. You're just too sensitive, baby. That's why I love you, you feel everything so deeply. And I did. I felt it all. The slow erosion of who I was. The constant guessing game, what mood will he be in today? Will he touch my back at brunch or avoid me like I'm contagious? But the final straw didn't come from him. It came from my cousin, Ariel. We were at my aunt's house, Aunt Diane, of course. Her daughter, the same one who once tripped me on purpose at a school recital, now sat across from me in pre-law confidence, sipping imported water like it owed her something. He was cute last night, Ariel said suddenly, twirling her straw. Who? I asked, genuinely confused. Damien, she replied, eyes gleaming. He brought me a drink at the bar after you left. Said you had a headache? My mouth went dry. And then what? I asked, tone careful. She shrugged. Nothing. Just talked. Flirted a little. It's not like you own him. The room tilted. I stood, slowly, the air too thick around me. Thanks, I said, voice flat. Aunt Diane didn't even look up. Just said, don't be dramatic, Grace. You always overreact. And just like that, I knew. It wasn't that I was too much. It was that they had always been too little. I waited 3 days before I asked him. We were in the kitchen, he was stirring coffee like it had wronged him, his phone face down on the counter. So, did you see Ariel at the bar last week? I asked, voice casual, too casual. He didn't flinch. Just stirred slower. She was there, he said finally. She came up to me. I was just being polite. Polite? I echoed. Grace, he said, sighing as he finally turned to face me, are we really doing this? No, I said, calmer than I felt. We're not. But my hands trembled as I opened the drawer and pulled out the receipts. The ones he forgot to delete. Hotel confirmations. Duplicate charges. 2 glasses of wine billed to a room I'd never seen. His name was on the check-in. So was hers. Damien didn't deny it. He just stood there, blinking, like I was the rude one for discovering the truth. You always wanted to be the victim, he said coldly. No, I whispered, my fingers clenching the paper like armor. I wanted to be the exception. His smirk was small. Cruel. You were never that special. That's when something broke inside me, but it didn't shatter. It sharpened. I hope she was worth it, I said, turning away. She's not, he muttered. But I didn't turn back. I had bigger things to plan. I didn't cry when he left. I didn't beg or yell or throw his things across the room like in the movies. I simply watched the door close, then locked it. Twice. I made a list that night. Not of his wrongdoings, I didn't need ink for what was already burned into my skin, but of all the things I'd let slide. The birthdays he forgot. The time he said, I'm not attracted to you when you talk too much. The night I found his phone face up with a message from Aria that said, she's too dumb to notice. I had noticed. I had just chosen to believe in potential instead of proof. I called the bank the next morning. Not because I needed money. But because I wanted to make sure every penny I had was mine and mine alone. Turned out, he'd quietly added himself to one of my savings accounts months ago. A just in case, he had called it. I transferred every dollar into a new account and changed the password to something he'd never guess, mistake no more. Then I logged into the college fund I had started for Ariel last year. I'd set it up quietly, after Aunt Diane cried at a family gathering about how hard it was raising a teenager alone. She's so bright, Grace, she had said, mascara smudged just enough to look real. She just needs a little help getting there. So I'd written the checks. Applied for the matching grant under my name. Sent the paperwork in with a note, happy to support her. We all deserve a chance. But it wasn't support. Not really. It was hope. That if I did enough, gave enough, maybe Aunt Diane would one day look at me and say, I was wrong about you. But she never did. So I pulled it. Revoked the sponsorship. Called the school, forwarded my legal rights, and requested the funds be redirected. I'm sorry, the administrator said gently, we'll have to notify the student. I smiled. That's fine. She'll understand. And if she didn't? That was her burden to carry now. I was done holding other people's bags. That Friday, Aunt Diane called. The first time in weeks. Grace, she said, tone sharp. Did you cancel Ariel's tuition support? Yes. Silence. You can't just do that. I can, I said evenly. I did. She's your cousin. She slept with my fiancé. That was a misunderstanding. I laughed. Loud. Not cruel. Just tired. She misunderstood my name on the bank transfer too? You're being petty. I leaned back in my chair, the sun slanting across my floor like a spotlight. No, Aunt Diane. I'm being precise. There was another pause. Then her voice lowered, honey-thick. We've always tried to help you, Grace. Even when your mother gave up. I nearly dropped the phone. Help me? She once told my 4th grade teacher I was emotionally slow. She threw out my college acceptance letter because she said it wouldn't matter, girls like you get married, not degrees. And yet she always smiled in photos, always made sure I looked small behind her sequined shoulders. I exhaled slowly. You didn't help me, I said, voice calm. You tolerated me when it was convenient. And now I'm returning the favor. You think you're better than us now? No, I said. I've always been better. I just stopped pretending otherwise. I ended the call. The phone didn't ring again. But 3 days later, I got an email from the college dean. It was formal. Polite. But between the lines, I saw Ariel's panic. The funding gap. The housing crisis it would cause. She was going to have to go back home. And Aunt Diane would have to look at her golden child every day and remember what she threw away for a man who didn't stay. I almost felt bad. Almost. But then I remembered how they laughed when Damien made a joke about my uptight habits. How Ariel once posted a photo of him kissing her cheek, captioned, #familyovereverything. I guess she didn't realize I was part of that hashtag, too. The following Sunday, I walked past the mirror and didn't flinch. My reflection was different now. Not just sharper, but steadier. I was no longer shrinking to fit anyone's table. I was building my own. And I wasn't saving a seat. 3 weeks passed. Not a word from Damien. Not a word from Ariel. Silence used to scare me. Now, it felt like peace. Until Aunt Diane showed up on my doorstep. No call. No warning. Just her, in a peach-colored blazer and pearls too tied around her neck, standing like the queen of some burned-down empire. I opened the door just enough to make a point. She didn't smile. We need to talk. We really don't. Grace, she said, her voice dipping into something that once passed for authority. You can't punish her forever. She didn't fail a test, Diane. She slept with my fiancé. She made a mistake. I leaned against the frame. Funny. That's what you called me, remember? Her lips twitched. You're being dramatic. No, I said calmly. I'm being direct. You raised her to believe she could do anything she wanted without consequence. You made that bed. Now she gets to sleep in it. She's going to lose everything. Her dorm, her classes. She lost those when she chose Damien. Aunt Diane stepped closer, the edge in her voice rising. You think this makes you powerful? No, I said. But it finally makes me free. She narrowed her eyes, the mask slipping. We took you in when no one else would. You took me in because you didn't want the neighbors to talk after Mom left. That's not true. It's exactly true. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Because for once, I wasn't the child trying to be loved. I was the woman who had built her own stability and revoked her silence. She tried one last play. If you don't reinstate the funds, we'll go to your uncle. He's a trustee on the estate. You don't want a legal fight, Grace. I smiled. Stepped back and opened the door wide. Then let him come. And I'll show him the emails from Ariel. The texts from Damien. The receipts. And maybe I'll show the rest of the family, too. You know, the ones you kept so carefully misinformed. Aunt Diane didn't move. Her mouth opened. Closed. Then, like a defeated empress, she turned and walked back to her car. Her heels clicked down my porch like a broken metronome. And when she slammed the door of her Lexus, I didn't flinch. Because for the first time in years, the house was quiet. But I wasn't alone. Later that night, I pulled out a letter I had written months ago. It was for my younger self, the version of me who thought love had to be earned, who thought silence was strength and compliance was love. I added a new line at the bottom, you were never the mistake. They just didn't know how to value something they couldn't control. Then I tucked it into a folder labeled closure, and finally, closed the drawer. The next day, a text came from an unknown number. It was Damien. I saw Diane came by. We should talk. I stared at the screen for a long time. And then, without a single word, I deleted it. No explanation. No farewell. Just silence. The kind that isn't empty. The kind that means, I have nothing left to say, because I've already said enough by leaving. The next morning, I sat down at my kitchen table, opened a blank sheet of paper, and wrote a letter I never intended to send. Dear Damien. You once told me I was lucky to have you. That no one else would ever love me like you did. You were right, in a way. No one will ever love me with that much manipulation, that much silence between apologies, that much convenience masked as commitment. But you were wrong about the rest. I don't need someone who calls me too much. Too sensitive. Too serious. I need someone who sees me, not someone who uses my softness as camouflage for their betrayal. So thank you. Thank you for cheating. Thank you for choosing Ariel. Because if you hadn't, I might still be shrinking to fit inside your life. I folded it, slid it into an envelope, and tucked it in a box labeled Truths I No Longer Carry. Then I turned on music. Loud. Joyful. Liberating. Because healing doesn't always arrive in grand declarations. Sometimes, it's just in the quiet joy of reclaiming your morning. It didn't take long for the family to find out. A cousin messaged me, he really cheated with Ariel. At Aunt Diane's party? Another girl. You're a legend. She's dropping out. And people are finally seeing Diane for who she is. Apparently, Ariel had moved back home. The college wouldn't hold her spot. And Aunt Diane's reputation? Shaky. The matriarch who once whispered behind people's backs now had the entire family whispering behind hers. But I didn't gloat. I didn't screenshot messages or forward them to anyone. Because revenge had already done its job. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't even slammed a door. I'd just removed the seat cushion they'd built their power on. And let gravity do the rest. One night, I got a call from my mother. We hadn't spoken in years. Not since she handed me off to Diane and left the state. Grace, she said softly. I heard what happened. I almost hung up. But something in her voice, is thin, not rehearsed, made me stay. You're not calling to defend her, are you? I asked. No, she said. I'm calling because I think you became everything I couldn't be. And I need to say I'm sorry. For leaving. For letting them tell you who you were. I didn't know what to say. I'm not asking you to forgive me, she added. I just needed you to hear it from me, not from gossip. I swallowed hard. Thank you for saying it. We didn't plan a reunion. No dramatic embrace. Just two women on the phone, finally speaking from the same page. And for now, that was enough. Weeks later, I heard Aunt Diane lost her position on the community board. The woman who once sneered at my clothes now couldn't show her face at book club. She's embarrassed, my cousin told me. Keeps saying she was manipulated. That she didn't know what Ariel was doing. I almost believed it, until I remembered how she used to say, Grace, if a man cheats, it's because a woman wasn't doing her part. I guess Ariel wasn't doing hers either. They tried to rebuild their image. But some cracks don't patch well. And I didn't need to lift a finger. Their downfall wasn't my revenge. My silence was. 6 months later, I hosted my first dinner party. Not fancy. Just 6 friends, 2 bottles of wine, and homemade peach pie. When I set the table, I paused for a second. No folding chairs. No trash bins nearby. Every seat had a name card. Every voice mattered. I sat at the head just out of habit, not ego. Someone raised a toast. To Grace, they said. For teaching us that walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. I smiled, heart steady. Because I wasn't just reclaiming a table. I had built a new one. And at this one? Everyone knew exactly where they belonged. Especially me.